I just got finished watching this Callum Smith, John Ryder fight from start to finish. This is the version I watch right here on Daily Motion. It's the DAZN broadcast with Glenn McCrory commentating. Good to see Big Glenn back behind the microphone, actually. Now, I only watched the last 2 rounds of this fight live. And when I tuned in, I was shocked to see John Ryder, a guy who'd been stopped by Nick Blackwell down at middleweight, a guy who'd lost to Rocky Fielding, somebody Callum Smith knocked out in 1 round. I was shocked to see him bullying Callum Smith all around the ring, landing lots of clean punches, giving him the business on the inside. Callum Smith bleeding from his nose and from a cut above his eye. Yeah, shocking stuff. I did not expect to tune in and see that. I looked in my Facebook group and a lot of people had John Ryder winning. The fight went to the final bell, and when the scorecards were read out, there was a sea of people in my Facebook group screaming robbery. Some people were saying just flat out robbery, John Ryder blatantly won, and other people were saying that the scorecards were ridiculous, but it was a close fight. Now, any of you who know my history here on this channel or my old channel, you will know that it is very, very rare for me to call a decision a robbery. That happens once in a blue moon, because the majority of the times when boxing fans scream robbery, it's not actually a robbery. It's usually a close fight which either didn't go to the man who they wanted to win, or they were influenced by the commentary, or the underdog did far better than they expected, so they end up giving him rounds which they really shouldn't be giving him, simply out of shock. Or it's a fighter who knows how to manipulate the perception of the crowd by showboating and all this kind of stuff, making it seem as though he's winning rounds which are actually razor close and could have gone either way, just by his body language. So that's generally what tends to happen with fights that are called robberies. They're actually usually close. So my history is I very rarely call a fight a robbery. Off the top of my head, a couple of examples of fights I did call robberies would be the first Pacquiao-Bradley fight. That was a robbery. The Derek Chisora-Robert Helenius fight. That was a robbery. Okay, but very seldom do I call something a robbery. So as far as this fight here, Callum Smith against John Ryder, I did score the fight round by round, and I'll give you my scorecard at the end. The first half of the fight, neither man was really doing anything particularly impressive. John Ryder was coming forward, but wasn't letting his hands go enough in many of the rounds. And when he did let go, nothing was landing particularly clean. For the most part, Callum Smith was mainly boxing at long range, occasionally on the back foot. His jab was out there, but again, he wasn't landing anything particularly clean either in the first half of the fight. I just felt that through the first 7 rounds, Callum Smith was doing just enough in most of the rounds to take him, because neither guy was doing much. Let's be real, by way of actually landing clean, effective punches. Neither guy was doing much. So I felt like Callum Smith just nicked the majority of the rounds in the first half of the fight. The second half of the fight was kind of the opposite way round, where I felt like John Ryder was doing just enough in most of the rounds to nick it. The only rounds which were really clear for John Ryder, for me, were the 11th and 12th, which were the rounds I caught live. Those rounds were clear John Ryder rounds. But the others, it was marginal, okay? So at the end of 12 rounds, I'll just give you my scorecard. I actually had it 114 to 114. I scored it a draw. It was a close fight. Anybody saying that John Ryder clearly won, well, you clearly don't know what you're looking at. You clearly don't know how to score a boxing match, because there was no clear winner in this fight. The judges' scorecards were absurd. Obviously, I think we can all agree on that. But anybody having it to John Ryder for, let's say 117, 111. That would be crazy too. So I think Callum Smith by a round or two is reasonable. John Ryder by a round or two is reasonable. I personally had it a draw. Because again, when you've got so many swing rounds in a fight, how can you be grumbling at one guy winning it by a round or the other guy? I mean, you can't grumble at that because there's just so many swing rounds. Watch this here. Go and watch the DAZN version of this fight because the commentators, Glenn McCrory and the other guy whose name escapes me, they're very calm. They're not being overly emotional and sensationalist. They're looking at the action and describing exactly what's going on, particularly Glenn McCrory, who does a great job, obviously a veteran commentator. And he had Callum Smith winning, I think, by a point, which to me, again, is reasonable, very reasonable. So, yeah, that's the story of the fight, people. Was it a robbery in terms of who came out the winner? No. In that sense, it wasn't a robbery. But were the judges' scorecards disturbing? Yes, particularly 117, 111. That's very disturbing because you would have had to have given Callum Smith every single round that was even marginally close to have the scorecard that wide. So that's a disturbing scorecard. And look, Callum Smith is from Liverpool. The fight was in Liverpool. We know that hometown favorites often get hometown decisions. Callum Smith is also the commodity for Matchroom. I mean, he was talking about leaving Matchroom not too long ago, or his manager trainer Joe Gallagher was, and that prompted Eddie Hearn to, get him this fight and overpay him for the John Ryder fight. Actually, that's what Eddie Hearn says. He had to overpay Callum Smith for this fight just to keep him with Matchroom because he was threatening to go and join PBC or whatever. So yeah, the fact that he was the marquee name here is probably the reason, almost certainly, why scorecards like this were going in his favor, 117, 111. It is what it is. It's sad, but bottom line is I can't grumble with a Callum Smith win. Like Callum Smith having his arm raised, if he got it by a round or two, you'd really have to be reaching to say that was a robbery, okay? It's just the margins that he won by, which is the issue for me. Similar to a lot of Canelo fights, for example, and I'll get on to Canelo in a second, because Canelo has had fights like the Miguel Cotto fight, where he won by a landslide. And I'm telling you, people, that fight was way more competitive than the judges made it out to be. And there were several other fights that Canelo's had, same thing. So, yeah, I do have an issue with that. But as far as Callum Smith wanting the Canelo fight, I mean, based on that performance, you'd make Canelo an even bigger favorite over Callum Smith than you would have done before this fight. Because Callum Smith, look, once again, I have to reiterate that I was shocked that John Ryder was able to do what he did in this fight, given the fact that he's been stopped by Nick Blackwell and, all the other stuff I talked about. The punches which knocked out George Groves, John Ryder was able to take no problem at all. I mean, was that not surprising to you guys? It was surprising to me. Yeah. George Groves himself, a big super middleweight. I know never had the greatest of chins, but again, John Ryder been stopped at a lower weight. But I do remember Callum Smith when he fought a late substitute called Nicky Holskin in the World Boxing Super Series. And that guy was, I think, a career kickboxer. And he boxed a similar fight to John Ryder where he was bullying Callum Smith around the ring. Styles make fights. And clearly, George Groves' style where he stands off against Callum Smith, that suits Smith more when you give him time and space to get his shots off. If you're a shorter guy like a John Ryder or a Nicky Holskin who can get underneath Callum Smith's punches, put pressure on him, get him on the inside, you're going to be able to have success. And I just described Canelo Alvarez. So, yeah, maybe Canelo Alvarez will see this as a very attractive fight now that Callum Smith has looked so vulnerable here. To, touch again on the thing I mentioned earlier about Callum Smith's weight, is that what the issue is here? That he actually needs to move up to 175 and then make him 168. He's just getting weaker and weaker because the older you get, the heavier your muscles are getting, the slower your metabolism becomes, the more difficult it is to get down to these weights. So maybe he'll be revitalized and rejuvenated at 175. But then again, maybe not. Maybe there's just stylistic issues and limitations with Callum Smith. Yeah, it's not like it's the first time we've seen him have issues in a fight. Again, that Nicky Holzken fight wasn't a million years ago. So that kind of style is exactly what Canelo has, but of course he's way better than Holzken or John Ryder. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. How did you score it? Drop your scorecards. Who would you like to see Callum Smith fight next? Do you think it's realistic for him to go after the Canelo fight? Or would you like to see him fight Billy Joe Saunders? Again, I saw people say Saunders would absolutely school Callum Smith off the back of that. But again, did you see Saunders' last performance? He didn't look very good. Okay, and Billy Joe Saunders is not a physical kind of fighter like a John Ryder or Holzken. No, Billy Joe's a slickster. I know he imposed himself on his previous, his last opponent, but that last opponent is no Callum Smith. There was certain things in there that Callum Smith was doing, particularly in the first half of the fight, that I really liked. I liked the way that he was hooking on the inside with the left. And sometimes he was doubling and tripling the hook up, where he would throw a hook to the body, then come up with an uppercut, then a left hook to the head. So I like the work he does with the left hand on the inside. Billy Joe Saunders on the inside isn't as compact, and I don't think it's as compact, and he's not as snappy as John Ryder is up close, and he's probably not as physically strong as John Ryder either. Obviously, he's fought and beat John Ryder himself. So, yeah, I don't know whether Billy Joe could fight that kind of fight as effectively as John Ryder did. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Billy Joe will do what Billy Joe normally does and just try and out-slick Callum Smith. But I do think that Smith will have more space to get his shots off, and it'll be real competitive. That's what I think. Obviously, Billy Joe's a lot faster and more fluid than Callum Smith. We have to take that into account. Smith could definitely be outmaneuvered here and there, and Billy Joe moves around the ring very well. So that's a fight I'd like to see personally next for Callum Smith. The Canelo Alvarez fight, I don't hate the fight, but there's other fights I'd rather see Canelo win personally. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.